desk is a bit of a cluster. Let me clear this off a little bit. I have a little more room to work. I'm also going to need all of these. Make sure I have them all this time. Ooh, my cameras just did touch off. Perfect. So I'll be doing, hopefully, the final testing protocol on this white, natural white DSi LL. Get a paper towel first. Okay, so what I want to first do is check all of the paperwork here. Failed to read game cart in test 1. It looks like I resolved it in test 1, be it through a cleaning or maybe something else. Let me check the digital records I have for this console. Assembled. I think it's my only... Oh no, I have 2 natural white consoles. Okay, it's 77. It's this one. The motherboard wasn't in the records for some reason, but I have no known issues. Great. This should be pretty smooth sailing. I did not mean to... Did I close out of that? No, I did not. Okay. Let me start by turning it on, checking the screens. Okay, the bottom screen has a little bit of yellowing to it. I don't know if that will come up. Not really. It's fairly faint. The upper screen is definitely a... Actually, no, this is a pretty good match, I would say. I mean, there is a difference. But when you look at it head on, I mean, those look pretty good, even in the camera. I would say maybe the top screen's a little more blue. And the bottom screen does have some very mild yellowing to it. But I think overall it looks pretty good. So what I first need to do is take it apart and just confirm that the motherboard I have on record and the motherboard in here match my current records, just to make sure everything's on the up and up. And it also gives me a chance to put a couple pieces of tape over 2 particular ribbon connectors, which Nintendo does out of the factory. I think are kind of entirely wholly unnecessary, but you know, this will be the last time I can realistically open it. So once I put the feed on, I really don't want to open it again. Let me check this number. I'm also going to begin filling out the paperwork. That'll be this form I have right here. I'll begin filling out this top information. Unit color. Technically it's natural white, but it's just white. I think it's more of a cream than a white, but you know. Motherboard serial number 2011 6012 U01 N07E -A05. And it is confirmed on my digital records. Sweet. So everything is in the up and up in that order. I'm going to get the information off of here. Running version number 1.4.1J. Battery test of 4 hours and 25 minutes. I don't need to... I'll just abbreviate it. And then the shell serial number is WJF108245877. Perfect. Now, as for the little pieces of tape, grab my scissors. I'll be putting tape over the two small ribbon connectors, one for the backlight, the other for the touchscreen. Nintendo put tape on them out of the factory, and I figured if they deemed it important enough to put little pieces of tape over them, then I should as well. My best theory is that they probably found within their stress testing of the console, if they did any type of stress testing, dropping it and seeing kind of what happens. Perhaps they found that these ribbon connectors have a chance of popping open, which would render the console pretty much inoperable in a couple different ways. Like, I mean, the console would still work fine without the ribbon cable connector for the digitizer, but you lose a major functionality of the DS. And if the if the backlight connector popped open, you wouldn't be able to turn the console on. I'll have to kind of tuck that one around so I don't create issues trying to putting the screw in the screw post. There we go. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, everything looks nice and buttoned up in here. I don't notice anything. Everything's all nice and seated. And if my first few tests are anything to go by, this should be really smooth. So let's get this put back together. Now what's mildly interesting, at least to me, is that the White DSi consoles, or the large consoles, I guess, the XL and the LL, use silver screws all the way around for its rear shell. This is shared with the rose gold US exclusive color scheme, which the natural white is a Japanese exclusive color scheme. All the other color schemes use black screws for these three right here. Does it make any functional difference? No, it's all cosmetic. I mean, the only real difference is this really small screw for the game card slot, which has a very coarse thread. I doubt I can get my poor camera to zoom in on it close enough to see the threads, but it's a very coarse thread screw, where the black screw that you would usually put in here is a finer thread. Functionally speaking, though, it really doesn't matter. All that screw is doing is just holding this flap down. Alright, so now I'll be prepared to run my battery of tests. So right down here in this column right here, I just have a series of tests I'll be going through. It's either a pass or a fail. Then after that, I'll go to more subjective cosmetic testing to see kind of how I value this console specifically. If it receives a certain score, I'll increase the value or decrease the value, basically. This one looks like to be in very good shape, so I'm expecting it to be in the very good category. So we start by doing a test of the motherboard and power board. That's a very general test, but really all I'm looking for is, does the console turn on? Well, in this case it wasn't, but that can just sometimes be a weird fluke that happens when you take out and put in the battery. Anyway, what I'm looking for is, does the console turn on? Yes. And does it open an application? I'm just going to use the settings menu. Yes. So this cuts out things like a failing memory chip, an issue with the little Wi-Fi daughter board, which looks like this. Issues with power delivery from the battery, just things like that. It just cuts off a lot of those possibilities, and, well, it wouldn't be at this stage of testing if it failed at any point. It's just something I like to check off, just for completeness' sake. So the next test is tactile buttons. Now, I'll be using my DS Pico, which is a flash cart. I have a piece of homebrew software on there. And what's nice about this piece of homebrew software is it will turn the bottom screen into like a visual representation of all the buttons with a little tiny light next to them, and it will respond to my inputs by flashing the light. And basically what I'll just be doing is just pressing the button a whole bunch of times, seeing what happens. See if the lights correspond with sort of the pace of my button presses. Face buttons I don't really worry about, they're almost always fine. Shoulder buttons are the ones that tend to have the bigger problems, so I spend a little more time with them. Oop. That click was the shell coming back together. I didn't depress the shoulder buttons when putting it back together. Not a big deal. And shoulder buttons are responding perfectly. Now, on to... I do need to charge the battery, it looks like. I'll have to do that before I actually send it off. But I'll go into touchscreen next. This has an OEM touchscreen in it, so I'm perfectly okay drawing on it. Aftermarket digitizers have a weird texture to them. I really hate using just a stylus on them without a screen protector. So what I'm looking for is kind of erratic inputs, any sort of like weird dead zones. So I've had touchscreens where you'll be tracing down. If I were to trace the perimeter, you would trace down and then just suddenly that would occur, and none of your touch inputs would respond in this zone. But in this case, I have no problems with this touchscreen. Looks like it's all good. Oop, okay. Next is speaker, microphone, and headphone jack. Basically all the sound systems. I'm going to combo this with an SD card slot test, as I have a piece of music loaded up on this SD card. I also need to grab a stylus for this console. I'll have to do that here probably after this. So let's check the microphone. And here is the volume buttons working. That one tactile button tester doesn't have volume buttons, but this is the best visual representation I have of the buttons working as they respond as a one-to-one to my inputs. La 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 la! Microphone works. It sees my SD card as well as the piece of music loaded up on it. So what I'm going to do is grab a pair of earbuds. I'm gonna play the song, listen to both speakers, plug in the earbuds, listen to both channels, and just make sure all of that works. And yep, all that works perfectly. Now, it's not exactly a thorough test of the SD card slot, but the way I kind of view it is if it can read the contents of an SD card perfectly, it sees the SD card, it plays the contents off of it, I really have no reason to believe it can't write to the SD card slot. And if it couldn't, that would definitely be a first. But it has no problem detecting the SD card and reading the contents off of it, which covers a majority of the use cases. Next is cameras. I don't do anything too spectacular here, just do the initialize. Is there anything weird about their feed? Which they all look fine to me. Charge port. Alright, so let me grab my USB tester. I think before I do charge port, I'm just going to plug it in and go get a stylus for this console. I hope I still have some white ones kicking around. If not, I'll just use a black one. And just say, well, that's, if you want to find a stylus that matches your console, you're going to have to do some shopping around. Cool, it does look like I have a natural white one. While I'm poking around in my parts, I'll go ahead and grab a screen protector. Do that later. Perfect. Doesn't exactly match. This one's a little yellowed, it looks like. But I mean, I might find a better one, actually. I think I only have two. Yeah, this one feels a little better. I'm going to see if I can clean it a little. So it'll give my console a good opportunity to charge. I'll charge it after I have it all assembled and ready to ship. I just don't want to have a red light flashing at me. The stylus looks good. There's a bit of like markings on this end, so I'll see if I can wipe them off. Or if they will come off. Oh yeah, they will. Okay. These are basically... This is an OEM stylus that just came with one of my white consoles, so I'm happy to put it back in a white console. And it's in very good shape. I mean, I would consider it brand new, aside from like a little bit of wear on the end. And why I rejected that other one, not because it was yellowed, but because of just the little locking tab was kind of holding onto it really hard. This feels a lot better. It's held in enough that it won't fall out, but not enough that you have to like pry it away from the console. Okay, so for the charge port, I'm looking for the system to respond software-wise. It says it's charging. I have an orange light, and my USB tester is saying it's pulling 0.5 amps. So I'm going to do is close the console and sort of jiggle around the charge port to see if I can get that orange light to shut off. Camera. It's having a hard time with that glossy shell. That orange light is staying steady, and that's telling me that all of the solder joints for the charge port are good, as well as the charge port itself is good. Well, I'll keep it plugged in as long as I can. I should be able to keep it plugged in while I do the next test, which is game card slot. That's where all of these game cards come into play. I have about, I think it's 20 the last time I counted. I don't know why. Let me count them again. One. Yes, it is 20. These are just random game cards that have come with my junk consoles. A lot of them, well, I mean, it might be sacrilege to say that Nintendogs is a shovelware game, but, you know, I never played it. That's not really my gaming interests. I have a stack of 20, which will hopefully remain a stack. Don't fall over. I'll be testing that all 20 games on this console one at a time and looking for very specific things. So I'll kind of explain that as I go. So what I'll do, take the game cart, this famous shovelware game, obviously, clip it in normally, shows up. Then what I'll do is put some pressure on it, just put my fingers on it and sort of shift the game card side to side. There's a tiny bit of play in the game card slot side to side. What I'm looking for is if that game disappears from the menu at all, if it ever disconnects, even just for a fraction of a second. So far, good. Then what I'll do is slowly push down on the game card as I'm shifting it side to side, pushing it down in like a means of me trying to get it to eject, or if I were to eject it like normal. Push it down, shifting it from side to side, and then I'll hear the audible click of the ejection game card slot mechanism, which I just heard. So right now it's kind of a point of no return, game card's coming out. And then just for fun, I go all the way until I can't push it down anymore, or I bottom it out in the game card slot. Basically shifting it from side to side, seeing if I can get it to disconnect, which it does. Now, let me test it again, because I do make kind of a special exception. This is kind of an extreme test, but it does catch some issues. Like for say, if you're playing a game and the game card were to cut out for just a fraction of a second, either your DS will just completely crash or just turn off. So right there, I'm able to get the game card to disappear. However, that's me holding the game card as far as it will go on the right-hand side of the game card slot. The way I kind of view that is a very extreme case. If there's an instance where you're pushing the game card beyond the ejection point, so right now it's beyond like the point where the mechanism will release the game card, you have bigger problems than your game just cutting out like that. So the game card's out. So that's sort of the one exception where I let that slide. But I'll do that test 2 or 3 times on every single game card here. And with the addition, I will slap the console on my open palm as a more of a practical real world scenario to see if the game card disappears. Which it did there for a second. It's also a good way to test the battery to make sure it has a nice solid connection to the power board and it's secure in the game card or in the battery port. I'm going to put Nintendogs aside. I'm going to come to it later. So I'm going to continue this test with other game cards to see if I can get it I can repeat what Nintendogs was showing. Which so far with this Harry Potter game, I'm not able to repeat that cutout. Try as I might, like I'm holding it in the same spot. It's still there. Didn't cut out. So this is kind of the perk of having such a large pool of game cards to test with, as if one game card shows problems, but the other 19 are okay, it is far less likely to be the console than it is just that individual game card. So it could be there's a pin on that Nintendogs that's a little dirty, or just for some reason isn't making good contact with one of the pins on the game card slot when the game card is like fully pressed into the game card slot, which is an atypical scenario. Ooh, I did get SpongeBob to cut out there. So I have two cards that currently show cutoff behavior. And I'll definitely scrutinize the sort of impact test a lot harder than I do the me pressing on the game in the game card slot, as I think the impact test is a lot more realistic than pushing down on the game card slot while you're trying to play the game. What I could do is go into the console and reflow the solder joints for the game card slot. I did recently have a console where, actually it was one of my motherboards I was prepping to sell. One of the game card pin solder joints cracked. And then once I reflowed the solder on that joint, it read games just fine, because it was having a really hard time with this test. Ooh, that one cut out a little randomly here. And if I can't repeat it, I usually just chalk that up to a bit of a fluke. There, did it again. Where is it doing that at? I'm gonna take this apart and inspect the game card slot. And I'm actually gonna let the battery charge here. I have a console I have destined to pull apart. This Japanese burgundy console. I'll put the battery in it. Okay, there are unique identifiers on the battery. I think just in case. This is the serial number for the battery, just in case I need to go back to find where that battery is, or what the battery was. So I'll let this burgundy console charge that battery while I'm looking at this game card slot. Curious if it will be another cracked solder joint. Because I understand that those game card pins, they do experience mechanical stress. Of course, but not enough to... I wouldn't think it would ever be enough to crack a solder joint. Especially how far and secure those game card pins are in that game card slot. Like, they're held in by a plastic housing, essentially. So I'm probably going to need to grab my microscope for this. So it was on the right side that those last, or that Nintendogs and whatever that last game was, we're having problems on. So let me inspect specifically those couple. Get my microscope feed on. I mean, I don't see anything too crazy here. Almost looks like there was a solder attempt here. If that were me or somebody else. I figured I would at least clean the area a little better than this. And those solder joints are pretty uniform. I'm not going to say I'm some genius when it comes to soldering, but a lot of the time my joints don't look that good. Let me check the game card slot itself. I'm scanning it by hand, or just looking at it by eye, but might be able to get a feed on it. Because all those pins, to what I can tell, all look really good. But you know what wouldn't hurt? Just quickly reflowing these solder joints. This may disqualify it from a final test. I'll just kind of see how it reacts to a quick reflow. Because I'm just going to want to make sure that it actually does fix the problem. And I don't want it reporting false positives. Really outer one must be a ground. And I know this one over here is a ground. Ooh. I mean, that should do it. If it were at all a solder joint issue, I can clean up whatever residual flux there was from whenever this board was soldered last. Okay. Get my solder iron put away, turned off. Alright, hopefully that got it a little bit of a charge. I'll try that game card slot test again. These were the ones that were sort of a special interest, but I'm just going to try them all. And nope, that did not fix it, so I'm going to have to do a cleaning pass on this game card slot. Which will mean I'll have to test it another day. Because I find that a freshly cleaned game card slot will report a false positive. Oh, right, I already have the screws out still. I never put it back together formally. So I'm going to get one of my games, coat the game card contacts in rubbing alcohol, and then just take it in and out of the game card slot multiple times. This also gives it a chance to clean the game card pins itself. I'll do another game just for fun. Well, I guess the only thing I can do is put it back together and save it for another day. There it goes. Well, let's see. And then update the paperwork and just say that a game card failed impact test. For number 3. So I'm gonna fail it for the 3rd test. Hopefully that cleaning was enough. But for now, I'm just gonna give it its own paperwork. Test it another day.